You are tuned in to Divine Love, Enlightening Relationships. Welcome, souls of the earth. This podcast will be based around sex positivity, healthy relationships, personal triggers, toxic ego work, enlightenment, quantum shifts, and so much more. Hello, everyone. I'm Pippa.
I'm Chris.
Hey, babe.
Hi.
Another week, another missing you.
I know. This has got to end someday. It has to. We have to reunite. It's too much.
It is. And hopefully we'll be together very soon. We've had some good news this week, haven't we? And my wish bracelet broke yesterday, which was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I know. I feel us getting closer, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we've had so many synchronicities again because, as some of my listeners may not know, I've come off social media for a while. And the reason why I did that is because it was playing with my ego. You know, my ego is always tested on social media, and I know my higher self wants me to be on a higher frequency. So I know social media brings that energy down because I'm not using it in the right way. So I'm listening to the call-ins, I'm listening to my higher self. And since I've come off it, actually, we've had many synchronicities, haven't we? And I think a few shifts have happened. And, we've had the good news from New Zealand coming in our direction. My wish bracelet broke. So it's all kind of pointing in the right direction, isn't it?
I think that like all of this, which hopefully comes out in this podcast, is just having faith in the process, having faith in our paths in life, looking back, reflecting back on where we've been, and then what's gotten us to this point. So for me, has my faith been tested? Yes, to an extent, but I've never completely lost it. It has been strained, very much so, as far as, why, I guess. Why is this happening to us? Why are we being kept apart by border closures? And we know we're not alone. We're not dense. I understand, people have been away from their families much longer. I mean, heck, I was away from, my own kids for over a year, fighting desperately to get back to them. So yeah, it's just having faith in the universe. And we feel like there's a shift is taking place in the next few weeks. So we just got to keep plugging ahead, right?
Right. And I think today we really wanted to talk about judgment and how the ego likes to judge. And it's something that Chris and I have worked on a lot in the last 12 months since being together because, we will be honest and open as always. We sometimes fall into the trap because it's a behavior, it's a habit, it's a belief. But we want to kind of talk about how, not judging, because what'll happen is, I was listening to Wayne on the way up to where I'm at now in Wales, and I remember thinking, yeah, we talked about that a lot, how the ego is always looking to be offended. And it's so true. It's so true. You think if you're walking down a street in your town centre and someone isn't dressed the way you're used to, or someone's got their hair like a bright pink, something random, that would make you feel uncomfortable because the ego would be like, oh my God, what is she wearing? Or what is he wearing? And that is judgment because we're not used to the not normal. So, Chris and I, if we see someone like that, we're like, oh God, he must be so happy. And we're like, we love it because it's people just embracing who they are. And there's many examples. And I do want to touch on ego and how, the difference between ego and higher self, because our ego, toxic ego, is something that I work with clients, and I do help Chris with it too. And Chris helps me with it as well because we're obviously twin flames, but I've done a lot of work on my ego. And the thing is, the ego is always attached to the physical and material world. So the ego never has enough. The ego always wants more. The ego is, what's in it for me? Well, your higher self is, how may I serve? The ego makes you think you're a victim of your circumstances, that you live in scarcity, that you don't have enough of something. I want to, have more riches and more material things, where your higher self is just, I live in abundance. Look around me. Like, I create my own reality, and remembering that I am happy and that I'm not attached. Because that's the thing that me and Chris will talk about, is that it's having a mind open to everything and attached to nothing, where the ego is attached to everything. So I know a lot of my clients have that battle constantly of the ego creeping in, telling them they're not worthy, telling them that they shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done this. And it's like, I get it. We've been there and we're still working through it. But the toxic ego is what I help clients with. And that's the one that really doesn't help with the anxiety, doesn't help with the stress, the worries. It's that part of you that sinks you into a lower vibration. It doesn't resonate with the higher vibrations. So it gets you into that like depressive state, that anxiety state. You sit and think and you let the seed grow and grow and grow. And I help clients be aware of that. So when you become aware of the ego, that is the first huge step. But what I do want to say is, I'm not here to tell you to delete the ego, to get rid of the ego completely, because that's not the end game. You want to dampen the ego and tell it just to pipe down at times, but your actual ego is what has been developed over millennia to protect you, to keep you safe. And Chris will laugh at this. I used to talk about this on my events. I used to say, when we were in the caves and there were dinosaurs outside, and Chris would always laugh and say, Pip, we weren't around when dinosaurs were around. And I was like, okay. So
saber-toothed cats, yes.
So say, when we were in caves and we didn't exactly have language then, we were, especially the men. I mean, this is not me being judgmental, but it is, men's ego is probably harder to be aware because of the protectiveness that the men have, and that's kind of in their DNA. And I know Chris will mention that in his sciencey, because he's the scientist here. So men find it harder because they have that protective mode. They have that, I want to provide and look after my family kind of thing. And that dates back to, when we're in the caves and the man would go out to find the food for the woman and the children, and his ego is the part of him that protects himself when a saber-tooth is running towards him or a different animal or whatever was out there. So the ego is to protect you, but the world we live in right now, the ego is attached to what I look like, my job title, my circle of friends, how much money I have, what's my bank account like, how big's my house, what car do I drive. It's attached to all of those things, and it wants more and more and more, and it will never. If you're living in an ego, your ego will never be fulfilled. It's like pouring a glass of water and the bottom's empty. It just will not ever fill up, and it just won't ever give you that satisfaction that, Wayne talks about Maslow and the top of the, asked what Chris and I did our course on a triangle, because it's really important. I studied Maslow when I did my business degree, and the top of that triangle is self-actualization. And that's what it's about, is living in that world of, like, you're satisfied because you're grateful for what you already have. So I know Chris will mention some things around scientific stuff, but, Chris's ego journey has been different to my ego journey because we've been through different traumas and we've had to heal different parts of ourselves, haven't we, babe?
Yeah, it's a lot to digest. For me, I think the big thing with the ego is just the awareness. And that's why like we teach, it's always the first A. It's just being aware of it, I think is a big, major step for anybody in self-healing, in their own discovery. Because when you can identify it, then okay, I'm an ego right now. I'm angry. This happened. And instead of projecting anger at others, I think you start going more internal. Like, I now get angry at myself. I'm like, I know I'm an ego. I know I'm being an a-hole. Why? What is it? What is the major issue? So for me, that is a huge, huge, huge step, where a couple years ago or 3 years ago, I'd be an ego and I didn't even know it. I didn't know what ego was. I was just like, okay, whatever. And then it would carry me away. So, going back to the judgment thing, because that's really what, as Pip covers the ego stuff, I was super judgy because of my past relationships. And I was with people that were very judgmental, we'd sit at lunch or dinner and my partner would point out people and just tear them up. Oh, look what they're wearing. Oh, look at that hairdo. Oh, da 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 da. And also society, like Pip said, society's very judgy. You look at social media, it's what do you do? Likes, in some places like I don't know, like Reddit or others, you have downvotes. Everything is judgy. You're judging people all the time. And God, I could go on and on about behavior, human behavior. We're subconsciously making judgments all the time, and that's our fight or flight. So imagine walking, and I used to talk about this all the time in teaching behavior. You're walking down a street. If they're, because especially if you're like you're a young woman, but even if you're a young man, and somebody's coming down the street towards you, say they look homeless, they're disheveled, they're talking to themselves, they have a scraggly beard, a hat, they're looking down, they look angry. What do you do? Like instantly your subconscious is going danger, danger, danger. So you'll either turn around and go the other way or cross the street so you don't go by them. I mean, you're judging, and that's natural. But that also carries over into our social world where, you're constantly judging people, and then you may make snide remarks, or you may, like Pippa said, the hairstyle or what they're wearing or anything. And when you start becoming aware of it, as far as, oh my God, I'm being judgy right now. Why? I think you start to crack your shell. I think you start to become more spiritual. You become more aligned with our true being, our true nature, which is love. And so for me, like I read a lot on the internet, especially what's going on in the United States politically. And it's so easy to get offended and make judgments left and right. And what I'm trying to do is I may read a story, but then I'm like, okay, that person has their opinion. Instead of making a judgment, I just go on. Right. So I don't know. I think where I'm trying to get at is being aware of what ego is, and then also being aware of when you do start becoming judgmental. And I think you need to check yourself and go, why? Why am I being judgmental? And go inward. Right? Yes.
And don't be so hard on yourself, because when I was listening to Wayne on the way up, he falls in the trap all the time. He died in 2015, and I was listening to one of his talks from 2012, and he said he did the same. He caught himself judging someone because of the way they were talking to someone else, and he just didn't like it. But he said, I'm not here to go around and, pick out people's faults. And that's what I think a lot of us do, is that it's so drilled in our brains that we don't have enough, and that we need more of something, and that we're always in lack. But we're actually not. And that's what Wayne was talking about, is that when you have appreciation and depreciation, he said the differences in the frequencies are so different. So think about when you're judging someone to when you're sending love. When you're judging someone, it's kind of coming from like a hatred, because it's like, why would you say that? Because we don't even know these people half the time. But then if you think about like appreciation, like, again, like say, as Chris's example was, if you've got like someone walking towards you and you make an assumption that they're homeless, they may not be homeless. They may just be like not looking after themselves in the way you would look after yourself. But again, if you did see like someone who was homeless outside a shop and you knew they were, and they were begging for money, I'll always go and like buy them food or get them a drink, because I want to give compassion, and I want to send that love, because that person may have needed that little bit of help that day. But one thing I want to touch on with judgments too is when we fall into an argument with someone, or we fall out with someone, or we disagree with someone, is, obviously, Chris, I'm still reading the Tao again. I'm rereading the Tao, and the Tao talks about listening. And so my task today is listen out for someone who has an opinion or says something that is disagreement to what I believe. Could be anything. And instead of like what, because sometimes your ego is boiling up to go, oh, well, I don't agree with that. And I want to say what I want to say, to get my point across. And we've all been there. You can feel like your energy wants to just say it, like, oh, I don't agree with that. And I think this way, or I think that way. Well, my task today is to sit in quiet and just say, oh, I've never really seen that point of view. And thanks for sharing that. Like, how amazing does that feel, instead of just saying, oh, well, no, I don't disagree with that, and I think you should look at this way. And it's that whole, like, for me, it's peace. When I'm not judging, I feel at peace, because I just feel like there is no competition in this world. There is no, because the ego obviously always thinks you're a victim of your circumstances. There's never enough, they're just attached to the physical world, and it just... There's one quote that I know you're probably going to mention, Chris, and it keeps going over and over in my mind, is there are no justified resentments. And I want you to talk about that.
Yeah,
if you'd like.
Well, okay, yeah, I can explain that one here in a minute. And that's finding forgiveness. That quote really led me down a path of forgiveness that has changed my life, has absolutely opened more doors of opportunity. And when you really think about it, so as you're talking and I'm thinking about judgment or ego or resentment, it's all dark energy. It's all negative energy. And if we just go back to the basics of laws of attraction, when you exert or exuberate or project negative energy, I'm a believer, because of the laws, these are, physics, but, laws of attraction, you attract more negative in your life. It's just when you're very negative and dark, and I've had these periods in my life where it's just, nothing was going right and it got worse and worse and worse, you attract more of it. Whereas when you are more positive, less judgmental, you're not an ego, you're aligned, you're exerting love and positive energy, you attract more of it. And so for me, everything turned, like, when Pippa and I started dating, and I was starting to do my gratitude, and I was grateful for all the things I had in my life, more doors opened up. A billionaire called me on the telephone one day and said, I want you to come work for me. I had another billionaire contact my best friend, say, I want to work with him. It's just all of a sudden these doors just started opening when I shifted my energy. And, I think when you hold resentments, you're not affecting the person you're resenting. You're affecting yourself. It eats you inside. It's that sits in your stomach, your chest, that anxiety. You were carrying that other day, not the person you're resenting. You're carrying it. And when you can learn to let that go, holy crap. I mean, your life changes. The light goes on, the light bulb goes on, and you feel lighter and freer. You're happier. I know it's easier said than done. And, I wish I could give all the details about my situation, some horrific, cruddy stuff. But when you learn to forgive and you move on, your life, like, it just is so much better. It's so much better.
You're so right, Chris. When you actually, like, when you said about when you're judging someone, you're actually judging yourself, because they're bringing up something uncomfortable in you. So I spoke to my client about this yesterday, and I spoke about this, how when you change your vibration, the opportunities will come. And again, when you're judging someone because of the way they look, their job, their money, their house, their car, whatever it is, everyone around, like, so when you're looking out, say you're like on a stage and you're looking at like a crowd of 1,000 people, and there's, say, a select few in that crowd that you see and you think, oh my God, and you're getting judgmental. Everything is a mirror. So you imagine walking down a street and you're just happy and you're smiling at people, and no matter what they're wearing, or because we're just so conditioned. That's the main word. It's we're conditioned to be a certain way, to act a certain way, because the ego wants to keep us I would say locked up, really. That's how I feel when I'm in ego. I just feel like the world's going to end. I just feel like sometimes when you let, I know a lot of my clients and friends resonate with that, when you let that seed grow, there could be something, your partner's, annoyed you, or you've had an argument with your sister or your brother or your parents or a friend, you can let that really destroy your week, and then it becomes into a month, and you have the ability and the power within you to change that. And think of the difference of, as Chris mentioned earlier on, he said, why, it's asking, why is this happening to me? Because again, the ego wants to be in the victim mode, because we obviously want to talk about judgment. The judgment comes in an argument too. You imagine when you've had a fallout and you'll catch yourself, going to one of your friends. Say you've had just an example, I'll throw it out there. You've had a fallout with your partner and they've really annoyed you, and then you go to one of your friends and you think, right, he's this, he's that, and you're name calling him, and you're effing and blinding, and that's judgmental, because that's not love. And I know, we have to let our ego speak, and we have to let our inner child speak and have compassion, but you have to have that compassion for yourself. Because when we fall into that victim mode of our circumstances, it's not the reality that we want to be in, because the higher self brings you into reality of awareness of, okay, that changed my energy. So that argument changed my energy. But why? What was it? This is what I do. I've got a really good friend. She's a trauma specialist, and she, if me and Chris ever have an argument or a tiff or whatever it is, there was one thing she got me to do, and she just said, ask yourself, what is it about what they're doing that I don't like? And then you can start to dissect it, because it's your responsibility. Because if you're walking down a street and all these things are being thrown at you, name calling, whatever it is that's going to affect you because it bothers you, it's your responsibility, and it's for you to take on board and have that awareness of, why is that bothering me? Because that'll be something deep rooted within you that's maybe happened when you were 3, 6, 12, 3 years ago. And that's the work that I do. I help clients pull out those subconscious memories, those subconscious traumas, those subconscious, things that have happened that we've just stored away because they've just happened. But you chose them. Me and Chris believe that we choose every circumstance that we find ourselves in. And there's always a reason for what it's happening. There's always a reason. That's what I try and teach people, is that we just easily fall into judgment because it's an easy energy to fall into, but it's not a serving energy. And that's why the ego wants to seek to serve itself, whether this higher self in your soul seeks to serve others. And by working on your trigger, by working on that, why is that bothering you? You're actually serving the other person too, because you're not fighting back. You're not, giving the ego what it wants. You're not feeding that ego. You're not feeding that dark energy, and you're actually coming into the light. So when you're doing this shadow work and when you're doing this ego work, I just want to say, whoever's halfway through this, have just started this, I'm proud of you, because it is tough and it never ends. But just know that it is the most rewarding work I've ever done.
It's very hard. Okay. So anybody that's been in any sort of romantic relationship, or everybody's fallen into ego in a fight, even with your parents, your siblings, relatives, but especially in romantic relationships, it really, that's really where you see it, because you love that person so much, but yet you get in these most people get in these nasty fights because you're both in ego, and it could last for days. It could last for an hour. It's part of the human condition, right? It has been drilled into us, like Pip said, back when saber-toothed cats, survival mechanisms. It's part of our evolution. But now, especially in modern society, in the last few hundred years, especially now in like the information age, the ego is not serving us anymore. We are not running from bears anymore. Yeah, some people might be on Earth, but bears kill very few people. Yeah, we don't run from dinosaurs. Yeah, I mean, okay, so bears kill 5 people a year total in the world. So, but you know what I mean? Like, we're not living in caves. We're not going out with spears and trying to take down woolly mammoths. So the ego today is really not serving humanity. It doesn't serve your relationship that much. Yeah, I mean, I'm very protective of Pippa. I'm protective of my children. I'm protective of my relatives, people I love, but that's, I think that's me being a man or whatever. I don't think we'll fully extinguish it, but the ego, especially in arguments, it drives me crazy when I drop into ego with Pip. It drives me nuts. It makes me so mad at myself. And like Pip said, be soft with myself, be caring. But I get so mad because I have the awareness that I'm in the wrong, but yet I still So I think, to get out of this podcast today is having an awareness of it and just start identifying when you drop an ego or judgment. And my favorite example, and this is with when Pip and I first started dating and we're driving, and I don't remember how it came up, but I remember somebody sped past us. And I used to get really angry at people that speed or really bad drivers, especially in England. They're really bad. And Pip would be like, stupid, I guess we could say, D-head or a-hole or whatever. And I laughed at her and I said, you know what I think now? I think that person's got diarrhea. Every time I see someone speed past me, I'm like, I bet you they have diarrhea and they're going to try to find a bathroom. So most of the time it's probably not true, but when I say it, it makes me laugh. It gives me empathy for them. I'm like, oh, we all know when that stomach gurgles, like, oh no, and you're driving. So I'm not judging them. Sure, they're driving unsafe. And if it was really unsafe, I'd report it to the authorities or something. But instead of getting angry, I just have a laugh and go and forget about it. Because if I get angry, like I used to, or I get offended, it drops my energy. I have that sitting in my stomach. I'll never see that person again because they're racing down the freeway or wherever. And it just kind of it ruins the moment for me. It ruins the afternoon for me or the day for me when you carry that negative energy. So instead of being judgy or judgmental, I go, okay, you got diarrhea. Okay. Or you have to pee really bad. I hope you make it, and I let it go. So that's just one of my examples.
Yeah. And there's one thing that's coming up in my mind now as well about being judgmental is something Wayne mentioned again. And I remembered he mentioned this, and I loved the theory behind it. He said, you can't give away what you don't have. Now, he didn't mean by you can't just give a gift away if you haven't gone and bought the gift. He basically meant, you can't give love away if you don't have love for yourself. So if you're constantly judging, constantly in anger, that's because what's inside of you is anger. And is judgmental energies. So I always think, as Chris said, you're mirroring back what's inside of you. So if you're constantly going around every day judging people, it's because you're actually judging yourself, because we need to have love and empathy for ourselves. We're the things, especially women, we're really bad at that. We look ourselves in the mirror up and down, look, our bum's too big, we don't like our figure, or, whatever it is that we, and that's the self-love part of things too. We're so judgmental with ourselves. So if you're judgmental with yourself a lot, that's what's going to come out of you. And that's the energy of the law of attraction. And that's why you're taking that out, and that's what's, what comes around goes around. So remember that phrase, you can't give away what you don't have. So if you're constantly giving anger, hatred, all these low energies out, look inside, self-reflect, do some forgiveness work around yourself, and, seeing yourself as a high, a higher vibrational being, a divine creation of the universe, of God, because you are. And start small. Just catch yourself being judgmental and just say a little prayer, or just say, correct yourself and say, actually, that person, they're probably dressed the way they want to be dressed. They're probably happy, and move forward, because it just, it's hard to be aware 24 hours a day. We have over 60,000 thoughts a day, and we can't possibly analyze each one of them. But if we can build a habit of trying to catch those negative ones, and that's why meditation really helps. because the meditation, your mind is made to wander. But meditation is about just quieting the mind, really focusing on the gaps, those gaps of quietness where you don't think of anything. And that really helps with going inward, because the ego wants to be external, where the higher self and the soul wants to go inward. And that's what I'm doing right now. I've come off social media. I'm going inward. I'm going deeper because I feel it, and I'm following that calling. So remember that you can't give away what you don't have. So what is within you right now? Is it love, compassion, empathy, happiness, joy, or is it the opposites? And how can you how can you elevate that frequency and those energies? Because it's really important that you do that.
Yeah, there's another good book too that Pip made me read, and I highly suggest it. It's called Good Vibes, Good Life, Vex King. And again, that's kind of, as we're talking, it just brought it up, and I remember that. And I want to read it again. Very easy read, talking about having that positive mindset day in, day out. It changes your life when you can focus on that and focus on the good. I read the news a lot, and Pip's always like, stop reading the news. I mean, especially with like COVID, and I'm really missing Pip. It's like I constantly check New Zealand news to see what's going on. And it is depressing. COVID and everything that's going on the earth is depressing. The news is always depressing. But I've just always, it's a habit of mine. I'm just, ever since I was young, I've just always had my nose to the news to see what's going on around the world. I just like to be educated and everything. But I notice I don't resonate with it anymore. I don't really read stories as much, especially politics. I read political stories. I'll click on it. I'll read it. I'll just turn it off. I'll say, nope, I'm not going to entertain that energy, because it just is meant to inflame you. It's meant to suck you in or whatever. So anything that drops your energy, or anything that is a negative source to you, try to limit it or cut it out of your life. Find the things that make you happy, find the things that bring you joy, even people in your life, which is a whole nother podcast, but people that are negative in your life that you can let go of them, because they are not serving you. You want to be as positive as you can day in, day out, with love in your heart, love for the universe, love for everything. When you do that, I guarantee you your life's going to change. It is going to change, and opportunity and abundance and all these other things we talk about are going to start coming your way. So it all starts with awareness, right, babe? I mean, it all starts with awareness.
It does. And as Chris mentioned earlier, that's our first A in our online course. And we always put the link to that in our show notes. We really would love some of you to take that course, because it really is life-changing. We go through, each of those 5 A's. And it's so funny, isn't it? Because we channeled that whole course last year. And then, since we launched the course, loads of stuff came up after that, like synchronicities, like our spiritual teachers were talking about it. And we were like, whoa. So we really truly believe that it's if you're on a spiritual journey and you want to delve deeper into your spirituality, you want to start seeing the world differently, you want to just focus on going inward, letting go of that ego, ditching the toxic ego, working on the higher self, we really recommend you take that course, because it will change your life. And we don't just say that lightly, because it really, really will change your life. And we hope that some of you take a look at it in the show notes. And we're also, our Patreon is live. We're so happy about that. We're just putting a lot of bonus episodes in there. We have our Telegram group going. So anyone who wants to join us on Patreon, please give us a shout and join us. And we'd love to have you in there.
And I just want to say, I mean, God, just trying to listen to ourselves. It sounds so woo-woo. Like, ooh, it sounds so like pie in the sky. That's impossible. No, I depend on my survival instincts or whatever. It's gotten me through life. I feel you. I feel the skepticism out there. Like, how do you live life in the clouds? You're not ignorant. we're not we're not leading a life of ignorance. Pip and I are not ignorant to the world, to the dark energy that's out there, to the horror stories that happen around the planet with wars and mass shootings back home in my country. We're not putting our head in the sand, right? We're not saying you completely shut the world off and live in this imaginary bubble. No, what we're saying is, yeah, have awareness of the outside world, but have inner peace. When you find this inner peace, this inner love, this positivity inside you, then you're ready to tackle the world. And those negative stories that pop up, yeah, you might drop into ego a little bit. You might have a little bit of judgment, but at least you recognize it. Boom, boom. Okay. Deep breaths, a lot of love. Okay. And you move on instead of having that like dark energy suck you in and really take control of your life. Right. So that's where I'm coming from. I've seen massive changes in my life. There's been massive changes in Pip's life. And this is why we do what we do. We're just going to keep talking about it because we want to bring you along on this journey with us. We do. And we hope you enjoy listening to us. Let us know if you like this episode, guys, and just reach out anytime if you want to get in touch with us. We can contact us I'm not on social media for a few weeks, but you've always got our email. So yeah, just keep doing the work and it will pay off. I promise you. And we're sending you so much love and light on this journey. And we hope you take some really knowledgeable tips from us because that's what we're here to do. Yep. Take care, guys.